Well, hello everyone. Not only is it obviously bedtime, it was obviously bedtime for me, as I totally took a nap and fell asleep. Woke up 15 minutes late for stream. I am so sorry about that. Oh, I always look forward to this one too. Really enjoy reading the Conan stories. Hey Sparky, hey Vela. I hope you can forgive me. I am so sorry for oversleeping. So, we tried something out over the weekend, something new, and we tried streaming magic after the stream, and wow, is all I can say. So, for those of you who journeyed over into that experiment with me, and those of you who were new, who came out, checked out my stream for the first time, thank you so much. We had the best live views we've had, and then, wait, we hit triple digits? Whoa. I gotta see this real quick. A 100 views on that VOD. That's awesome. That's like the first time that we've gotten anywhere close to that milestone. We had 50, 60 some before, but triple digits is a brand new thing. So thank you so much for that. And we're going to... What? It's primarily targeted... No, not true. Can't be. I don't believe it. Anyway, we're going to try doing magic streams after story time and see how that goes for a bit as an experiment. And hopefully you'll come along for the ride. It does mean more time with me streaming, because I will not be taking away from story time to do this. I'll be adding. So if you enjoy, good news. If you don't, I'm so sorry, but really, if you're not enjoying it, what are you doing here in the first place? Crazy people. In any case, figured we'd open with a little Baudelaire and then jump into Conan and see if he's going to be able to overcome Zaltatun now that he has the Heart of Ahriman. You're here to mock me, Panda? Ouch. Ouch. This is brutal. Absolutely brutal. But alright. So, in honor of it being bedtime and me oversleeping, how about we read Parisian Dream by Baudelaire for our opening poem? Yeah, Panda is savage. Absolutely savage. That marvelous landscape of my dream, which no eye knows, nor ever will. At moments wide awake I seem to grasp, and it excites me still. Sleep, how miraculous you are! A strange caprice had urged my hand to banish as irregular all vegetation from that land. And proud of what my art had done, I viewed my painting and knew the great, intoxicating monotone of marble, water, steel, and slate. Stairs and arcades there were, and a long labyrinth which led to a vast palace. Fountains there were gushing gold and gushing lead. And many a heavy cataract hung like a curtain and did not fall, as water does, but hung compact, crystal, on many a metal wall. Tall nymphs with tightened breasts and knees gazed at their images unblurred, where groves of colonnades, not trees, fringed a deep pool where nothing stirred. Blue sheets of water, left and right, spread between quays of rose and green, to the world's end and out of sight, and still expanded, though unseen. Enchanted rivers those, with jade and jasper were their banks bedecked. Enormous mirrors dazzled made dizzy by all they did reflect. And many a Ganges, taciturn and heedless in the vaulted air, poured out the treasure of its urn into a gulf of diamond there. As architect, it tempted me to tame the ocean at its source, and this I did. I made the sea under a jeweled culvert course, and every color, even black, became prismatic, polished, bright. The liquid gave its glory back, mounted in iridescent light. There was no moon, there was no sun, for why should sun and moon conspire to light such prodigies, each one blazed with its own essential fire? A silence, like eternity, prevailed, there was no sound to hear. These marvels all were for the eye, and there was nothing for the ear. I woke, my mind was bright with flame. I saw the cheap and sordid hole I live in, and my cares all came burrowing back into my soul. Brutally the 12 strokes of noon against my naked ear were hurled, and a gray sky was drizzling down upon the sad, lethargic world. And that translation of Baudelaire was by Edna St. Vincent Millay. Figured it was appropriate. Dreaming of a more modern environment, and then waking at the stroke of noon to realize woke up too late. Although, not exactly noon here, but what's the difference? Anyway, I hope you've been enjoying Baudelaire. These are all from his collections. The collection, The Flowers of Evil. By the way, if you want to pick it up and read along sometime. But we were adventuring with Conan. All right. Let's see. Normally I have all this prepared, but having to find the Conan book. All right. We were on chapter 21, Drums of Peril. Confirmation of the war came when the army of Poitin, 10,000 strong, marched through the southern passes with waving banners and shimmer of steel. And, at their head, the spies swore, rode a giant figure in black armor, with the royal lion of Aquilonia worked in gold upon the breast of his rich silken surcoat. Conan lived. The king lived. There was no doubt of it in the men's minds now, whether friend or foe. With the news of the invasion from the south, there also came word, brought by hard-riding couriers, that a host of Gundermen was moving southward, reinforced by the barons of the northwest and northern Bessonians. Tarascus marched with 31,000 men to Galperin on the river Shirki, where the Gundermen must cross to strike at the town still held by the Numidians. The Shirki was a swift, turbulent river, rushing southward through rocky gorges and canyons, and there were few places where an army could cross at that time of the year, when the stream was almost bank full with the melting of the snows. All the country east of the Shirki was in the hands of the Numidians, and it was logical to assume that the Gundermen would attempt to cross it at either Galpern or at Tanasul, which lay to the south of Galperin. Reinforcements were daily expected from Numidia, until word came that the king of Ophir was making hostile demonstrations on Numidia's southern border, and to spare any more troops would be to expose Numidia to the risk of an invasion from the south. Almeric and Valerius moved out from Tarantia with 25,000 men, leaving as large a garrison as they dared to discourage revolts in the cities during their absence. They wished to meet and crush Conan before he could be joined by the rebellious forces of the kingdom. The king and his Poitanians had crossed the mountains, but there had been no actual clash of arms, no attack on towns or fortresses. Conan had appeared and disappeared. Apparently he had turned westward through the wild, thinly settled hill country, and entered the Bessonian marches, gathering recruits as he went. Almeric and Valerius with their host, Numidians, Aquilonian renegades, and ferocious mercenaries, moved through the land in baffled wrath, looking for a foe which did not appear. Almeric found it impossible to obtain more than vague, general tidings about Conan's movements. Scouting parties had a way of riding out and never returning, and it was not uncommon to find a spy crucified to an oak. The countryside was up and striking as peasants and countryfolk strike savagely, murderously, and secretly. All that Almeric knew certainly was that a large force of Gundermen and northern Bessonians was somewhere to the north of him, beyond the Shirki, and that Conan, with a smaller force of Poitanians and southern Bessonians, was somewhere to the southwest of him. He began to grow fearful that if he and Valerius advanced further into the wild country, Conan might elude them entirely, march around them, and invade the central provinces behind them. Almeric fell back from the Shirki Valley and camped in a plain a day's ride from Tanasul. There he waited. Tarascus maintained his position at Galperin, for he feared that Conan's maneuvers were intended to draw him southward, and so let the Gundermen into the kingdom at the northern crossing. To Almeric's camp came Zaltatun in his chariot, drawn by the uncanny horses that never tired, and he entered Almeric's tent where the Baron conferenced with Valerius over a map spread on an ivory camp table. This map Zaltatun crumpled and flung aside. "What your scouts cannot learn for you," quoth he, "my spies tell me, though their information is strangely blurred and imperfect, as if unseen forces were working against me. I need to update my followers. So I do. We'll just turn the follower off for now. There we go. That better, Villa? Unseen forces, like maybe a glowing, fiery ruby named the Heart of Ahriman, I bet. Conan is advancing along the Shirki River with 10,000 Poitanians, 3,000 southern Bessonians, and barons of the west and south with their retainers to the number of 5,000. An army of 30,000 Gundermen and northern Bessonians is pushing southward to join him. They have established contact by means of secret communications used by the cursed priests of Asura, who seem to be opposing me, and whom I will feed to a serpent when the battle is over. I swear it by Set. Both armies are headed for the crossing at Tanasul, but I do not believe that the Gundermen will cross the river. I believe that Conan will cross instead and join them. Why should Conan cross the river? Because it is to his advantage to delay the battle. The longer he waits, the stronger he will become, the more precarious our position. The hills on the other side of the river swarm with people passionately loyal to his cause. Broken men, refugees, fugitives from Valerius's cruelty. From all over the kingdom, men are hurrying to join his army, singly and by companies. Daily, parties from our armies are ambushed and cut to pieces by the country folk. Revolt grows in the central provinces, and will soon burst into open rebellion. The garrisons we left there are not sufficient, and we can hope for no reinforcements from Numidia for the time being. I see the hand of Palantides in this brawling on the Ophirian frontier. He has kin in Ophir. If we do not catch and crush Conan quickly, the provinces will be in a blaze of revolt behind us. We shall have to fall back to Tarante to defend what we have taken, and we may have to fight our way through a country in rebellion, with Conan's whole force at our heels, and then stand siege in the city itself, with enemies within as well as without. No. We cannot wait. We must crush Conan before his army grows too great, before the central provinces rise. With his head hanging above the gate at Tarantia, you will see how quickly the rebellion will fall apart. Why do you not put a spell on his army to slay them all? Asked Valerius, half in mockery. Zaltatun stared at the Aquilonian, as if he read the full extent of the mocking madness that lurked in those wayward eyes. "Do not worry," he said at last. "My arts shall crush Conan finely, like a lizard under the heel. But even sorcery is aided by pikes and swords." "If he crosses the river and takes up his position in the Goralian hills, he may be hard to dislodge," said Almeric. "But if we catch him in the valley on this side of the river, we can wipe him out. How far is Conan from Tanasul?" "At the rate he is marching, he should reach the crossing sometime tomorrow night. His men are rugged, and he is pushing them hard. He should arrive there at least a day before the gundermen." "Good!" Almeric smote the table with his clenched fist. "I can reach Tanasul before he can. I'll send a rider to Tarascus, bidding him follow me to Tanasul. By the time he arrives, I will have cut Conan off from the crossing and destroyed him. Then our combined force can cross the river and deal with the gundermen." Zaltatun shook his head impatiently. "A good enough plan if you were dealing with anyone but Conan. But your 25,000 men are not enough to destroy his 18,000 before the gundermen come up. They will fight with the desperation of wounded panthers. And suppose the gundermen come up while the hosts are locked in battle. You will be caught between two fires and destroyed before Tarascus can arrive. He will reach Tanasul too late to aid you." "What then?" demanded Almeric. "Move with your whole strength against Conan," answered the man from Acheron. "Send a rider bidding Tarascus join us here. We will wait his coming. Then we will march together to Tanasul." "But while we wait," protested Almeric, "Conan will cross the river and join the gundermen." "Conan will not cross the river," answered Zaltatun. Almeric's head jerked up, and he stared into the cryptic dark eyes. "What do you mean?" "Suppose there were torrential rains far to the north, at the head of the Shirki. Suppose the river came down in such a flood as to render the crossing at Tanasul impassable. Could we not then bring up our entire force at our leisure, catch Conan on this side of the river, and crush him? And then, when the flood subsided, which I think it would do the next day, could we not cross the river and destroy the gundermen? Thus we could use our full strength against each of these smaller forces in turn." Valerius laughed, as he always laughed at the prospect of the ruin of either friend or foe, and drew a restless hand jerkily through his unruly yellow locks. Almeric stared at the man from Acheron with mingled fear and admiration. "If we caught Conan in Shirki Valley, with the hill ridges to his right and the river in flood to his left," he admitted, "with our whole force, we could annihilate him. Do you think, are you sure, do you believe such rains will fall?" "I go to my tent," answered Zaltatun, rising. "Necromancy is not accomplished by the waving of a wand. Send a rider to Tarascus, and let none approach my tent." The last command was unnecessary. No man in that host could have been bribed to approach that mysterious black silken pavilion, the door flaps of which were always closely drawn. None but Zaltatun ever entered it, yet voices were often heard issuing from it. Its walls billowed sometimes without a wind, and weird music came from it. Sometimes, deep in midnight, its silken walls were lit red by flames flickering within, limning misshapen silhouettes that passed to and fro. What do you think the odds are that Zaltatun's just like sitting in there making shadow puppets in front of a brazier to freak people out? I admit, I might do that. Lying in his own tent that night, Almeric heard the steady rumble of a drum in Zaltatun's tent. Through the darkness it boomed steadily, and occasionally the Numidian could have sworn that a deep, croaking voice mingled with the pulse of the drum. And he shuddered, for he knew that voice was not the voice of Zaltatun. The drum rustled and muttered on like deep thunder, heard afar off, and before dawn, Almeric, glancing from his tent, caught the red flicker of lightning afar on the northern horizon. In all other parts of the sky the great stars blazed whitely, but the distant lightning flickered incessantly, like the crimson glint of a firelight on a tiny turning blade. At sunset of the next day, Tarascus came up with his host, dusty and weary from hard marching, the footmen straggling hours behind the horsemen. They camped in the plain near Almeric's camp, and at dawn the combined army moved westward. Ahead of him roved a swarm of scouts, and Almeric waited impatiently for them to return and tell of the Poitanians trapped beside a furious flood. But when the scouts met the column, it was the news that Conan had crossed the river. "What?" exclaimed Almeric. "Did he cross before the flood?" "There was no flood," answered the scouts, puzzled. "Late last night he came up to Tanasul and flung his army across." "No flood!" exclaimed Zaltatun, taken aback for the first time in Almeric's knowledge. "Impossible! There were mighty rains upon the headwaters of the Shirki last night, and the night before that." "That may be, your lordship," answered the scout. "It is true the water was muddy, and the people of Tanasul said that the river rose perhaps a foot yesterday, but that was not enough to prevent Conan's crossing." Zaltatun's sorcery had failed. The thought hammered in Almeric's brain. His horror of this strange man out of the past had grown steadily since that night in Belverus, when he had seen a brown, shriveled mummy swell and grow into a living man. And the death of Orestes had changed lurking horror into active fear. In his heart was a grisly conviction that the man, or devil, was invincible. Yet now he had undeniable proof of his failure. Yet even the greatest of necromancers might fail occasionally, thought the Baron. At any rate, he dared not oppose the man from Acheron. Yet. Orestes was dead, writhing, and Mitra only knew what nameless hell. And Almeric knew his sword would scarcely prevail where the black wisdom of the renegade priest had failed. What grisly abominations Zaltatun plotted lay in the unpredictable future. Conan and his host were a present menace, against which Zaltatun's wizardry might well be needed before the play was all played. They came to Tanasul, a small fortified village, at the spot where a reef of rocks made a natural bridge across the river, passable always except in times of greatest flood. Scouts brought in the news that Conan had taken up his position in the Goralian hills, which began to rise a few miles beyond the river. And just before sundown, the Gunderman had arrived in his camp. Almeric looked at Zaltatun, inscrutable and alien in the light of the flaring torches. Night had fallen. "What now? Your magic has failed. Conan confronts us with an army nearly as strong as our own, and he has the advantage of position. We have a choice of two evils, to camp here and await his attack, or to fall back toward Tarantia and await reinforcements." We are ruined if we wait," answered Zaltatun. "Cross the river and camp on the plain. We will attack at dawn." "But his position is too strong," exclaimed Almeric. "Fool!" A gust of passion broke the veneer of the wizard's calm. "Have you forgotten Valkia? Because some obscure elemental principle prevented the flood, do you deem me helpless? I had intended that your spears should exterminate our enemies, but do not fear. It is my arts that shall crush their host. Conan is in a trap. He will never see another sunset. Cross the river." They crossed by the flare of torches. The hooves of the horses clinked on the rocky bridge, splashed through the shallows. The glint of the torches on shields and breastplates was reflected redly in the black water. The rock bridge was broad on which they crossed, but even so, it was past midnight before the host was camped in the plain beyond. Above them, they could see fires winking redly in the distance. Conan had turned at bay in the Goralian hills, which had more than once before served as the last stand of an Aquilonian king. Almeric left his pavilion and strode restlessly through the camp. A weird glow flickered in Zaltatun's tent, and from time to time a demoniacal cry slashed the silence, and there was a low, sinister muttering of a drum that rustled rather than rumbled. Almeric, his instincts whetted by the night and the circumstances, felt that Zaltatun was opposed by more than physical force. Doubts of the wizard's power assailed him. He glanced at the fires high above him, and his face set in grim lines. He and his army were deep in the midst of a hostile country. Up there, among those hills, lurked thousands of wolfish figures, out of whose hearts and souls all emotion and hope had been scourged, except a frenzied hate for their conquerors, a mad lust for vengeance. Defeat meant annihilation, retreat through a land swarming with blood-mad enemies. And on the morrow he must hurl his host against the grimmest fighter in the western nations, and his desperate horde. If Zaltatun failed them now. Half a dozen men-at-arms strode out of the shadows. The firelight glinted on their breastplates and helmet crests. Among them they half led, half dragged a gaunt figure in tattered rags. Saluting, they spoke. "My lord, this man came to the outposts and said he desired word with King Valerius. He is an Aquilonian." He looked more like a wolf the traps had scarred. Old sores that only fetters make showed on his wrists and ankles. A great brand, the mark of hot iron, disfigured his face. His eyes glared through the tangle of his matted hair as he half crouched before the Baron. "Who are you, you filthy dog?" demanded the Numidian. "Call me Tiberius," answered the man, and his teeth clicked in an involuntary spasm. "I have come to tell you how to trap Conan." "A traitor, eh?" rumbled the Baron. "Men say you have gold," mouthed the man, shivering under his rags. "Give some to me. Give me gold, and I will show you how to defeat the king." His eyes glazed widely. His outstretched, upturned hands were spread like quivering claws. Almeric shrugged his shoulder in distaste, but no tool was too base for his use. "If you speak the truth, you shall have more gold than you can carry," he said. "If you are a liar and a spy, I will have you crucified, head down. Bring him along." In the tent of Valerius, the Baron pointed to the man who crouched shivering before them, huddling his rags about him. "He says he knows a way to aid us on the morrow. We will need aid if Zaltatun's plan is no better than it has proved so far. Speak on, dog." The man's body writhed in strange convulsions. Words came in a stumbling rush. "Conan camps at the head of the Valley of Lions. It is shaped like a fan with steep hills on either side. If you attack him tomorrow, you will have to march straight up the valley. You cannot climb the hills on either side. But if King Valerius will deign to accept my service, I will guide him through the hills and show him how he can come upon Conan from behind. But if it is to be done at all, we must start soon. It is many hours' riding, for one must go miles to the west, then miles to the north, and then turn eastward, and so come into the Valley of Lions from behind, as the Gundermen came." Almeric hesitated, tugging his chin. In these chaotic times, it was not rare to find men willing to sell their souls for a few gold pieces. "If you lead me astray, you will die," said Valerius. "You are aware of that, are you not?" The man shivered, but his wide eyes did not waver. "If I betray you, slay me." "Conan will not dare divide his force," mused Almeric. "He will need all his men to repel our attack. He cannot spare any to lay ambushes in the hills. Besides, this fellow knows his hide depends on his leading you as he promised. Would a dog like him sacrifice himself? Nonsense. No, Valerius, I believe the man is honest. Or a greater thief than most, for he would sell his liberator," laughed Valerius. "Very well, I will follow the dog. How many men can you spare me?" 5,000 should be enough," answered Almeric. "A surprise attack on the rear will throw them into confusion, and that will be enough. I shall expect your attack about noon." "You will know when I strike," answered Valerius. As Almeric returned to his pavilion, he noted with gratification that Zaltatun was still in his tent, to judge from the blood-freezing cries that shuddered forth into the night air from time to time. When presently he heard the clink of steel and the jingle of bridles in the outer darkness, he smiled grimly. Valerius had about served his purpose. The Baron knew that Conan was like a wounded lion that rends and tears even in his death throes. when Valerius struck from the rear. The desperate strokes of the Cimmerian might well wipe his rival out of existence before he himself succumbed. So much the better. Almeric felt he could well dispense with Valerius once he had paved the way for a Numidian victory. Good friends there. Good buddies. The 5,000 horsemen who accompanied Valerius were hard-bitten Aquilonian renegades for the most part. In the still starlight, they moved out of the sleeping camp, following the westward trend of the great black masses that rose against the stars ahead of them. Valerius rode at their head, and beside him rode Tiberius, a leather thong about his wrist, gripped by a man-at-arms who rode on the other side of him. Others kept close behind with drawn swords. "Play us false, and you die instantly," Valerius pointed out. "I do not know every sheep path in these hills, but I know enough about the general configuration of the country to know the directions we must take to come in behind the Valley of the Lions. See that you do not lead us astray." The man ducked his head, and his teeth chattered as he volubly assured his captor of his loyalty, staring up stupidly at the banner that floated over him, the golden serpent of the old dynasty. Skirting the extremities of the hills that locked the Valley of Lions, they swung wide to the west. An hour's ride, and they turned north, foraging through the wild and rugged hills, following dim trails and tortuous paths. Sunrise found them some miles northwest of Conan's position, and here the guide turned eastward and led them through a maze of labyrinths and crags. Valerius nodded, judging their position by various peaks thrusting up above the others. He had kept his bearings in a general way, and he knew they were still headed in the right direction. But now, without warning, a gray fleecy mass came billowing down from the north, veiling the slopes, spreading out through the valleys. It blotted out the sun, and the world became a blind gray void in which visibility was limited to a matter of yards. Advance became a stumbling, groping muddle. Valerius cursed. He could no longer see the peaks that had served him as guideposts. He must depend wholly upon the traitorous guide. The golden serpent drooped in the windless air. Presently, Tiberius seemed himself confused. He halted and stared about uncertainly. "Are you lost, dog?" demanded Valerius harshly. "Listen." Somewhere ahead of them, a faint vibration began, the rhythmic rumble of a drum. "Conan's drum!" exclaimed the Aquilonian. "If we are close enough to hear the drum," said Valerius, "why do we not hear the shouts and the clang of arms? Surely battle has joined." "The gorges and the winds play strange tricks," answered Tiberius, his teeth chattering with the ague that is frequently the lot of men who have spent much time in damp underground dungeons. "Listen." Faintly to their ears came a low, muffled roar. "They are fighting down in the valley," cried Tiberius. "The drum is beating on the heights. Let us hasten." He rode straight on toward the sound of the distant drum, as one who knows his ground at last. Valerius followed, cursing the fog. Then it occurred to him that it would mask his advance. Conan could not see him coming. He would be at the Cimmerian's back before the noonday sun dispelled the mists. Just now, he could not tell what lay on either hand, whether cliffs, thickets, or gorges. The drum throbbed unceasingly, growing louder as they advanced, but they heard no more of the battle. Valerius had no idea toward what point of the compass they were headed. He started as he saw gray rock walls looming through the smoky drifts on either hand, and realized that they were riding through a narrow defile. But the guide showed no sign of nervousness, and Valerius hove a sigh of relief when the walls widened out and became invisible in the fog. They were through the defile. If an ambush had been planned, it would have been made in that pass. But now Tiberius halted again. The drum was rumbling louder, and Valerius could not determine from what direction the sound was coming. Now it seemed ahead of him, now behind, now on one hand or the other. Valerius glared about him impatiently, sitting on his war-horse with wisps of mist curling about him and the moisture gleaming on his armor. Behind him, the long lines of steel-clad riders faded away and away like phantoms into the mist. "Why do you tarry, dog?" he demanded. The man seemed to be listening to the ghostly drum. Slowly, he straightened in his saddle, turned his head and faced Valerius, and the smile on his lips was terrible to see. "The fog is thinning, Valerius," he said in a new voice, pointing a bony finger. "Look." The drum was silent. The fog was fading away. First the crests of the cliffs came in sight above the gray clouds, tall and spectral. Lower and lower crawled the mists, shrinking and fading. Valerius started up in his stirrups with a cry that the horsemen echoed behind him. On all sides of them the cliffs towered. They were not in a wide open valley as he had supposed. They were in a blind gorge, walled by sheer cliffs hundreds of feet high. The only entrance or exit was that narrow defile through which they had ridden. "Dog!" Valerius struck Tiberius full in the mouth with his clenched, mailed hand. "What devil's trick is this?" Tiberius spat out a mouthful of blood and shook with fearful laughter. "A trick that shall rid the world of a beast. Look, dog!" Again Valerius cried out, more in fury than in fear. The defile was blocked by a wild and terrible band of men who stood silent as images. Ragged, shock-headed men with spears in their hands, hundreds of them. And up on the cliffs appeared other faces, thousands of faces, wild, gaunt, ferocious faces marked by fire and steel and starvation. "A trick of Conan's," raged Valerius. "Conan knows nothing of it," laughed Tiberius. "It was the plot of broken men, of men you ruined and turned to beasts. Almeric was right. Conan has not divided his army. We are the rabble who followed him, the wolves who skulked in these hills, the homeless men, the hopeless men. This was our plan, and the priests of Asura aided us with their mist. Look at them, Valerius. Each bears the mark of your hand, on his body or on his heart. Look at me. You do not know me, do you? What of this scar your hangman burned upon me? Once you knew me. Once I was lord of Emilius, the man whose sons you murdered, whose daughters your mercenaries ravaged and slew. You said I would not sacrifice myself to trap you? Almighty gods, if I had 1,000 lives, I would give them all to buy your doom. And I have bought it. Look on the men you broke, dead men who once played the king. Their hour has come. This gorge is your tomb. Try to climb the cliffs. They are steep. They are high. Try to fight your way back through the defile. Spears will block your path. Boulders will crush you from above. Dog, I will be waiting for you in hell. Throwing back his head, he laughed until the rocks rang. Valerius leaned from his saddle and slashed down with his great sword, severing shoulder and bone and breast. Tiberius sank to the earth, still laughing gastily through a gurgle of gushing blood. The drums had begun again, encircling the gorge with guttural thunder. Boulders came crashing down. Above the screams of dying men shrilled the arrows in blinding clouds from the cliffs. Yeah, maybe it was a bad idea to make your whole country hate your guts. Chapter 22. The Road to Acheron. And Sparky, don't worry. If I was doing that with the shadow puppets to freak people out, I would totally invite all of you to participate. We could hang out in the tent with the fire going and make the shadow puppets and giggle as we heard people freak out in the camp. Yes, I giggle. Don't judge me. Dawn was just whitening the east when Almeric drew up his hosts in the mouth of the Valley of Lions. This valley was flanked by low, rolling but steep hills, and the floor pitched upward in a series of irregular natural terraces. On the uppermost of these terraces, Conan's army held its position, awaiting the attack. The host that joined him, marching down from Gunderland, had not been composed exclusively of spearmen. With them had come 7,000 Bosonian archers, and 4,000 barons and their retainers of the north and west, swelling the ranks of his cavalry. Sorry, I seem to be a little congested. Actually, I've got some decongestants here. I'm going to take one real quick. Give me just a second. All right. The pikemen were drawn up in a compact, wedge-shaped formation at the narrow head of the valley. There were 19,000 of them, mostly Gundermen, though some 4,000 were Aquilonians of other provinces. They were flanked on either hand by 5,000 Bessonian archers. Behind the ranks of the pikemen, the knights sat their steeds motionless, lances raised, 10,000 knights at Poitain, 9,000 Aquilonians, barons, and their retainers. It was a strong position. His flanks could not be turned, for that would mean climbing the steep, wooded hills in the teeth of the arrows and swords of the Bessonians. His camp lay directly behind him, in a narrow, steep-walled valley, which was indeed merely a continuation of the Valley of Lions, pitching up at a higher level. He did not fear a surprise from the rear, because the hills behind him were full of refugees and broken men, whose loyalty to him was beyond question. But if his position was hard to shake, it was equally hard to escape from. It was a trap as well as a fortress for the defenders, a desperate last stand of men who did not expect to survive unless they were victorious. The only line of retreat possible was through the narrow valley at their rear. Zaltatun mounted a hill on the left side of the valley, near the wide mouth. This hill rose higher than the others, and was known as the King's Altar, for a reason long forgotten. Only Zaltatun knew, and his memory dated back 3,000 years. He was not alone. His two familiars, silent, hairy, furtive, and dark, were with him, and they bore a young Aquilonian girl, bound hand and foot. They laid her on an ancient stone, which was curiously like an altar, and which crowned the summit of the hill. Kona? Do you mean Kana? For long centuries it had stood there, worn by the elements, until many doubted it was anything but a curiously shaped natural rock. But what it was and why it stood there, Zaltatun remembered from of old. The familiars went away, with their backs bent backs like silent gnomes, and Zaltatun stood alone beside the altar, his dark beard blown in the wind, overlooking the valley. He could see clear back to the winding Shirki, and up into the hills beyond the head of the valley. He could see the gleaming wedge of steel drawn up the head of the terraces, and the burgonets of the archers glinting among the rocks and bushes. The silent knights, motionless on their steeds, their pennons flowing above their helmets, their lances rising in a bristling thicket. Looking in the other direction, he could see the long, serried lines of the Numidians, moving in ranks of shining steel into the mouth of the valley. Behind them, the gay pavilions of the lords and knights, and the drab tents of the common soldiers stretched back almost to the river. Like a river of molten steel, the Numidian host flowed into the valley, the great scarlet dragon rippling over it. First marched the bowmen in even ranks, arbalists half raised, bolts knocked, fingers on triggers. After them came the pikemen, and behind them the real strength of the army, the mounted knights, their banners unfurled to the wind, their lances lifted, walking their great steeds forward as if they rode to a banquet. And higher up on the slopes, the smaller Aquilonian host stood grimly silent. There were 30,000 Numidian knights, and, as in most Hyborian nations, it was the chivalry which was the sword of the army. The footmen were used only to clear the way for a charge of the armored knights. There were 21,000 of these, pikemen and archers. The bowmen began loosing as they advanced, without breaking ranks, launching their quarrels with whir and tang. But the bolts fell short, or rattled harmlessly from the overlapping shields of the Gundermen. And before the arbalesters could come within killing range, the arching shafts of the Bessonians were wreaking havoc in their ranks. A little of this, a futile attempt at exchanging fire, and the Numidian bowmen began falling back in disorder. Their armor was light, their weapons no match for the Bessonian longbows. The western archers were sheltered by bushes and rocks. Moreover, the Numidian footmen lacked something in the morale of the horsemen, knowing as they did that they were being used merely to clear the way for the knights. The crossbowmen fell back, and between their opposing lines the pikemen advanced. These were largely mercenaries, and their masters had no compunction about sacrificing them. They were intended to mask the advance of the knights until the latter were within smiting distance. So while the arbalesters plied their bolts from either flank at long range, the pikemen marched into the teeth of the blast from above, and behind them the knights came on. When the pikemen began to falter beneath the savage hail of death that whistled down from the slopes above them, a trumpet blew, their companies divided to right and left, and through them the mailed knights thundered. They ran full into a cloud of stinging death. The cloth-yard shafts found every crevice in their armor, and even the housings of the steeds. Horses, scrambling up the grassy terraces, reared and plunged backward, bearing their riders with them. Steel-clad forms littered the slopes. The charge wavered and ebbed back. Back down in the valley, Almeric reformed his ranks. Tarascus was fighting with drawn sword under the scarlet dragon, but it was the Baron of Tor who commanded that day. Almeric swore as he glanced at the forest of lance-tips visible above and beyond the headpieces of the gundermen. He had hoped his retirement would draw the knights out in a charge down the slopes after him, to be raked from either flank by his bowmen and swamped by the numbers of his horsemen. But they had not moved. Camp servants brought skins of water from the river. Knights doffed their helmets and drenched their sweating heads. The wounded on the slopes screamed vainly for water. In the upper valley, springs supplied the defenders. They did not thirst that long, hot spring day. On the king's altar, beside the ancient carven stone, Zaltatun watched the steel tide ebb and flow. On came the knights, with waving plumes and dipping lances. Through a whistling cloud of arrows they plowed to break like a thundering wave on the bristling wall of spears and shields. Axes rose and fell above the plumed helmets. Spears thrust upward, bringing down horses and riders. The pride of the gundermen was no less fierce than that of the knights. They were not spear fodder to be sacrificed for the glory of better men. They were the finest infantry in the world, with a tradition that made their morale unshakable. The kings of Aquilonia had long learned the worth of unbreakable infantry. They held their formation unshaken. Over their gleaming ranks flowed the great lion banner, and at the tip of the wedge a giant figure in black armor roared and smote like a hurricane, with a dripping axe that split steel and bone alike. The Numidians fought as gallantly as their traditions of high courage demanded, but they could not break the iron wedge, and from the wooden knolls on either hand arrows raked their close-passed ranks mercilessly. Their own bowmen were useless, their pikemen unable to climb the heights and come to grips with the Bessonians. Slowly, stubbornly, sullenly, the grim knights fell back, counting their empty saddles. Above them the gundermen made no outcry of triumph. They closed their ranks, locking up the gaps made by the fallen. Sweat ran into their eyes from under their steel caps. They gripped their spears and waited, their fierce hearts swelling with pride that a king should fight on foot with them. Behind them, the Aquilonian knights had not moved. They sat their steeds, grimly immobile. A knight spurred a sweating horse up the hill called the king's altar and glared at Zaltatun with bitter eyes. Almeric bids me say that it is time to use your magic, wizard, he said. We are dying like flies down there in the valley. We cannot break their ranks. Zaltatun seemed to expand, to grow tall and awesome and terrible. Return to Almeric, he said. Tell him to reform his ranks for a charge, but to await my signal. Before that signal is given, he will see a sight that he will remember until he lays dying. The knight saluted as if compelled against his will, and thundered down the hill at breakneck pace. Zaltatun stood beside the dark altar stone, and stared across the valley, at the dead and wounded men on the terraces, at the grim, blood-stained band at the head of the slopes, at the dusty, steel-clad ranks reforming the vale below. He glanced up at the sky, and he glanced down at the slim, white figure on the dark stone. And lifting a dagger inlaid with archaic hieroglyphs, he intoned an immemorial invocation. Set, God of darkness, scaly lord of the shadows, by the blood of a virgin and the sevenfold symbol, I call to your sons below the dark earth. Children of the deeps, below the red earth, under the black earth, awaken and shake your awful manes. Let the hills rock, and the stones topple upon my enemies. Let the sky grow dark above them, the earth unstable beneath their feet. Let a wind from the deep black earth curl up beneath their feet, and blacken and shrivel them. He halted short, dagger lifted. In the tense silence, the roar of the host rose beneath him, borne on the wind. On the other side of the altar stood a man in a black hooded robe, whose coif shadowed pale, delicate features, and dark eyes calm and meditative. Dog of Asura, whispered Zaltatun. His voice was like the hiss of an angered serpent. Are you mad that you seek your doom? O Baal, Chiron! Call again, dog of Acheron, said the other, and laughed. Summon them loudly. They will not hear, unless your shouts reverberate in hell. From a thicket on the edge of the crest came a somber old woman in peasant garb, her hair flowing over her shoulders, a great gray wolf following at her heels. Witch, priest, and wolf, muttered Zaltatun grimly, and laughed. Fools to pitch your charlatan's mummery against my arts. With a wave of my hand, I brush you from my path. Your arts are straws in the wind, dog of Python, answered the Assyrian. Have you wondered why the Shirki did not come down in flood and trap Conan on the other bank? When I saw the lightning in the night, I guessed your plan, and my spells dispersed the clouds you had summoned before they could empty their torrents. You did not even know that your rain-making wizardry had failed. You lie, cried Zaltatun, but the confidence in his voice was shaken. I have felt the impact of a powerful sorcery against mine, but no man on earth could undo the rain magic once made, unless he possessed the very heart of sorcery. But the flood you plotted did not come to pass, answered the priest. Look at your allies in the valley, Pythonian. You have led them to the slaughter. They are caught in the fangs of the trap, and you cannot aid them. Look! He pointed. Out of the narrow gorge of the upper valley, behind the Pythonians, a horseman came flying, whirling something about his head that flashed in the sun. Recklessly he hurtled down the slopes, through the ranks of the gundermen, who sent up a deep-throated roar and clashed their spears and shields like thunder in the hills. On the terraces between the hosts, the sweat-soaked horse reared and plunged, and his wild rider yelled and brandished the thing in his hands like one demented. It was the torn remnant of a scarlet banner, and the sun struck dazzlingly on the golden scales of a serpent that writhed thereon. Valerius is dead, cried Hadrathus ringingly. A fog and a drum lured him to his doom. I gathered that fog, dog of Python, and I dispersed it. I, with my magic, which is greater than your magic. What matters it, roared Zaltatun, a terrible sight, his eyes blazing and his features convulsed. Valerius was a fool. I do not need him. I can crush Conan without human aid. Why have you delayed? Mocked Hadrathus. Why have you allowed so many of your allies to fall pierced by arrows and spitted on spears? Because blood aids great sorcery, thundered Zaltatun, in a voice that made the rocks quiver. A lurid nimbus played about his awful head. Because no wizard wastes his strength thoughtlessly. Because I would conserve my powers for the great days to be, rather than employ them in a hill country brawl. But now, by Set, I shall loose them to the uttermost. Watch, dog of Asura, false priest of an outworn god, and see a sight that shall blast your reason forevermore. Hadrathus threw back his head and laughed, and hell was in his laughter. Look, black devil of Python. His hand came from under his robe, holding something that flamed and burned in the sun, changing the light to a pulsing golden glow in which the flesh of Zaltatun looked like the flesh of a corpse. Zaltatun cried out as if he had been stabbed. The heart! The heart of Ahriman. I, the one power that is greater than your power. Zaltatun seemed to shrivel, to grow old. Suddenly his beard was shot with snow, his locks flecked with gray. The heart, he mumbled. You stole it, dog, thief. Not I. It has been on a long journey far to the southward. But now it is in my hands, and your black arts cannot stand against it. As it resurrected you, so shall it hurl you back into the night whence it drew you. You shall go down the dark road to Acheron, which is the road of silence and the night. The dark empire, unreborn, shall remain a legend and a black memory. Conan shall reign again, and the heart of Ahriman shall go back into the cavern below the temple of Mitra, to burn as a symbol of the power of Aquilonia for 1,000 years. Zaltatun screamed inhumanly and rushed around the altar. Dagger lifted, but from somewhere, out of the sky perhaps, or the great jewel that blazed in the hand of the Hadrathus, shot a jetting beam of blinding blue light. Full against the breast of Zaltatun it flashed, and the hills re-echoed the concussion. The wizard of Acheron went down as though struck by a thunderbolt, and before he touched the ground he was fearfully altered. Beside the altar stone lay no fresh slain corpse, but a shriveled mummy, a brown, dry, unrecognizable carcass sprawling among moldering swathings. Somberly, old Zalata looked down. He was not a living man, she said. The heart lent him a false aspect of life that deceived even himself. I never saw him as anything other than a mummy. Hadrathus bent to unbind the swooning girl on the altar, when from among the trees appeared a strange apparition. Zaltatun's chariot, drawn by the weird horses. Silently, they advanced to the altar and halted, with the chariot wheel almost touching the brown, withered thing on the grass. Hadrathus lifted the body of the wizard and placed it in the chariot, and without hesitation the uncanny steeds turned and moved off southward down the hill. And Hadrathus and Zalata and the gray wolf watched them go, down the long road to Acheron, which is beyond the ken of men. All right, we're going to take a quick intermission there, and I'm going to warm up my tea. And I might ask a giveaway question, if you guys would be interested in that. We'll go heat up some waffles real quick. Be quick, let me know when you're back, and I will wait for you as long as it's not too long. I think we're almost done with the story. Yep, getting really close. We're at 94%. Afterward, I think we'll jump into magic. Play that. I think we'll go for an easy one this time. So, the question for today for the giveaway is, what operating system do I use? First correct answer gets an extra point. It is also written down somewhere in addition to the numerous times I've said it. So a very findable thing. Dinosaur what? Vela muttered something about dinosaur and whispered shush to me in Discord. I'm not sure what she's talking about. You calling me a dinosaur? Mm. Oh, wow. Anyway, first person to answer correctly will get a bonus point. Oh, so how's everyone doing so far? How's your new year going? Rawr. Rawr like a dinosaur. Well, apparently 8-Ball is trash talking me on your behalf, Vela. That was quick, JMath. So, JMath, the giveaway question is, what operating system do I use? We didn't have to run. So, she sings to herself in the mirror in your bathroom? It's actually kind of awesome. Apparently 8-Ball is not going to save me, Vela. Outlook not so good. Or maybe that's just what happens if I continue to tease you. So, very important question, JMath, although not for the giveaway. What do you put on your waffles? This is a crucial question. In fact, everybody, what do you put on your waffles? Just syrup? Okay. What do you put on your waffles, Panda? Waffles. I do sliced bananas and real maple syrup. What about you, Vela? What do you put on yours? The cat chittering? Your favorite noise is the cat chittering? That's like the creepy noise. It's like little demons in the walls. Alright. Well, let's go back to the story. That waffle question might even be a giveaway question for next month. I know this one really weird person who smears peanut butter all over their waffles. It's really weird. Cool person, but very odd. All right. Think we'll be able to conclude the Captain Crunch French toast. Weird. Yeah, peanut butter. They smear it all over the waffles. Seb puts peanut butter on his waffles? Man, all of you are weird. Ugh. Apparently there are several people here who put peanut butter on their waffles. Down in the valley, Almeric had stiffened in his saddle when he saw that wild horseman curveting and caracoling on the slopes while he brandished that blood-stained serpent banner. Then some instinct jerked his head about toward the hill known as the King's Altar, and his lips parted. Every man in the valley saw it, an arcing shaft of dazzling light that towered up from the summit of the hill, showering golden fire. High above the host it burst in a blinding blaze that momentarily paled the sun. "That's not Zaltatune's signal," roared the Baron. "No," shouted Tarascus. "It's a signal to the Aquilonians. Look!" Above them, the immobile ranks were moving at last, and a deep-throated roar thundered across the vale. "Zaltatune has failed us," bellowed Almeric furiously. "Valerius has failed us. We have been led into a trap. Mitra's curse on Zaltatune, who led us here. Sound the retreat." "Too late," yelled Tarascus. "Look!" No, you get to have your opinion even if it's different than other people, J-Math. For what it's worth, I'm with you about the peanut butter. Hey, Gecko, glad to see you. How are you? Glad you could make it. Everybody's answering what they like on their waffles, so if you want to throw that into the chat, however you like your waffles. We're also debating the merits of peanut butter on waffles. Surprisingly, we have a couple people in favor of it. I thought it was really weird when I saw it for the first time, but apparently it's more common than I thought. Well, you're not the only one who overslept for the stream. I decided to take a nap so that I could stay up late and play Magic and, stream for all of you, and it backfired. Up on the slopes, the forest of lances dipped and leveled. The ranks of the gunnermen rolled back to the right and left like a parting curtain, and with a thunder, like the rising roar of a hurricane, the knights of Aquilonia crashed down the slopes. The impetus of that charge was irresistible. Bolts, driven by the demoralized arbalesters, glanced from their shields, their bent helmets, their plumes and pennons streaming out behind them. Their lances lowered, and they swept over the wavering lines of pikemen and roared down the slopes like a wave. Almeric yelled an order to charge, and the Numidians, with desperate courage, spurred their horses at the slopes. They still outnumbered the attackers. But they were weary men on tired horses, charging uphill. The onrushing knights had not struck a blow that day. Their horses were fresh. They were coming downhill, and they came like a thunderbolt. And like a thunderbolt they smote the struggling ranks of the Numidians, smote them, split them apart, ripped them asunder, and dashed the remnants headlong down the slopes. Lies, I was like 15 minutes late. After them on foot came the gundermen, blood mad, and the Bessonians were swarming down the hills, loosing as they ran at every foe that still moved. Down the hills washed the tide of battle. The dazed Numidians swept on the crest of the wave. Their archers had thrown down their arbalists and were fleeing. Such pikemen as had survived the blasting charge of the knights were cut to pieces by the ruthless gundermen. In a wild confusion the battle swept through the wide mouth of the valley, and into the plain beyond. All over the plain swarmed the warriors, fleeing and pursuing, or broken into single combat, in clumps of smiting, hacking knights on rearing, wheeling horses. But the Numidians were smashed, broken, unable to reform or make a stand. By the hundreds they broke away, spurring for the river. Many reached it, rushed across and rode eastward. The countryside was up behind them. The people hunted them like wolves. Few ever reached Tarantia. The final break did not come until the fall of Almeric. The Baron, striving in vain to rally his men, rode straight at the clump of knights that followed the giant in black armor, whose surcoat bore the royal lion, and over whose head floated the golden lion banner, with the scarlet leopard of Poitain beside it. A tall warrior in gleaming armor couched his lance and charged to meet the Lord of Tor. They met like a thunderclap. The Numidian's lance, striking his foe's helmet, snapped bolts and rivets, and tore off the casque, revealing the features of Palantides. But the Aquilonian's lance head crashed through shield and breastplate to transfix the Baron's heart. A roar went up as Almeric was hurled from his saddle, snapping the lance that impaled him, and the Numidians gave way as a barrier burst under the surging impact of a tidal wave. They rode for the river in a blind stampede that swept the plain like a whirlwind. The hour of the dragon had passed. Tarascus did not flee. Almeric was dead, the color-bearer slain, and the royal Numidian banner trampled in the blood and dust. Most of his knights were fleeing, and the Aquilonians were riding them down. Tarascus knew the day was lost, but with a handful of faithful followers, he raged through the melee, conscious of but one desire, to meet Conan the Cimmerian. And at last, he met him. Seems like a bad plan. Formations had been destroyed utterly, close-knit bands broken asunder and swept apart. The crest of Trocero gleamed in one part of the plain, those of Prospero and Palantides in others. Conan was alone. The house troops of Tarascus had fallen one by one. The two kings met man to man. Even as they rode at each other, the horse of Tarascus sobbed and sank under him. Conan leaped from his own steed and ran at him, as the king of Numidia disengaged himself and rose. Steel flashed blindingly in the sun, clashed loudly, and blue sparks flew. Then a clang of armor as Tarascus measured his full length on the earth beneath a thunderous stroke of Conan's broadsword. The Cimmerian placed a mail-shod foot on his enemy's breast and lifted his sword. His helmet was gone. He shook back his black mane, and his blue eyes blazed with their old fire. "Do you yield?" "Will you give me quarter?" demanded the Numidian. "Aye, better than you'd have given me, you dog. Life for you and all your men who throw down their arms, though I ought to split your head for an infernal thief," the Cimmerian added. Tarascus twisted his neck and glared over the plain. The remnants of the Numidian host were flying across the stone bridge, with swarms of victorious Aquilonians at their heels, smiting with the fury of glutted vengeance. Bessonians and Gundermen were swarming through the camp of their enemies, tearing the tents to pieces in search of plunder, seizing prisoners and ripping open the baggage and upsetting the wagons. Tarascus cursed fervently, and then shrugged his shoulders as well as he could under the circumstances. "Very well. I have no choice. What are your demands?" "Surrender to me all your present holdings in Aquilonia. Order your garrisons to march out of the castles and towns they hold, without their arms, and get your infernal armies out of Aquilonia as quickly as possible. In addition, you shall return all Aquilonians sold as slaves, and pay an indemnity to be designated later, when the damage your occupation of the country has caused has been properly estimated. You will remain as hostage until these terms have been carried out." "Very well," surrendered Tarascus. "I will surrender all the castles and towns now held by my garrisons without resistance, and all the other things shall be done. What ransom for my body?" Conan laughed and removed his foot from his foe's steel-clad breast, grasped his shoulder and heaved him to his feet. He started to speak, and then turned to see Hydrathus approaching him. The priest was as calm and self-possessed as ever, picking his way between rows of dead men and horses. Conan wiped the sweat-smeared dust from his face with a blood-stained hand. He had fought all through the day, first on foot with the pikemen, then in the saddle leading the charge. His surcoat was gone, his armor splashed with blood and battered with strokes of sword, mace, and axe. He loomed gigantically against a background of blood and slaughter, like some grim pagan hero of mythology. "Well done, Hadrathus," quoth he gustily. "By Crom, I am glad to see your signal." My knights were almost mad with impatience, and eating their hearts out to be at sword strokes. I could not have held them much longer. "What of the wizard?" "He has gone down the dim road to Acheron," answered Hadrathus. "And I am for Tarantia. My work is done here, and I have a task to perform at the temple of Mitra. All our work is done here. On this field we have saved Aquilonia, and more than Aquilonia. Your ride to your capital will be a triumphal procession through a kingdom mad with joy. All Aquilonia will be cheering the return of their king. And so, until we meet again in the great royal hall, farewell." Conan stood silently watching the priest as he went. From various parts of the field, knights were hurrying toward him. He saw Palantides, Tricero, Prospero, Servius Galanus, their armor splashed with crimson. The thunder of battle was giving way to a roar of triumph and acclaim. All eyes, hot with strife and shining with exultation, were turned toward the great black figure of the king. Mailed arms brandished red-stained swords. A confused torrent of sound rose, deep and thunderous as the sea surf. "Hail, Conan, king of Aquilonia!" Tarascus spoke. "You have not yet named my ransom." Conan laughed and slapped his sword home in its scabbard. He flexed his mighty arms and ran his blood-stained fingers through his thick black locks, as if feeling there his re-won crown. "There is a girl in your seraglio named Zenobia." "Why, yes, so there is." "Very well." The king smiled as at an exceedingly pleasant memory. "She shall be your ransom, and naught else. I will come to Belverus for her as I promised. She was a slave in Numidia, but I will make her a queen of Aquilonia." Aw, he liked her. And that is the end of the Hour of the Dragon. What'd you guys think? Did you like it? Oh, don't mind my stretching. Should we do one more Conan story before we find something else to read on Tuesdays? I know I originally said I was going to do 3, but I was thinking that they would be like short stories. That one was actually like a full novel, so I kind of feel like it takes care of the like original assertion. But if you guys want to hear another Conan story, I can totally do one. They're pretty fun to read. Stretchy, stretchy, poppy, poppy. Get your magic playing fingers ready. All right. Crack the neck, pop the back. Ow, pop my shoulder. Shoulder's been killing me the last few days. I injured it while I was in the military. How many stories in the Conan book? They're separate ones. So I'd have to go get another Conan from Gutenberg. Injured my shoulder while I was in the military. And because of that, it dislocates more easily than it should. Excuse me. Sorry. Didn't mean to do that with the mic on. My bad. And I partially dislocated it like 2 days ago. And so it's been really sore and weak. Just popped again. I had to have somebody help me lift it and put it back into socket because it slipped partially out. Yep, my left one. All right, let's get rid of the timer software because we don't need that. Wait, what? How is it my fault your shoulder's messed up, Bella? What are you talking about? That's not my fault. And mine's only been like hurting for 2. So clearly, if we're talking about like sympathetic injuries thing, you caused mine. That's just how it is. So yes, I just raspberried Bella. All right. I'll need to change the stream title. Stream manager. Stream info. Let's see. This is what, like the 4th day I've played? 5th, maybe? And we're marked mature still. Hey, JMath, there was a mature content warning on here. So clearly anything I do on here is mature. Raspberries are very mature. And switch to gameplay stream. All right, and away we go. If you want to play a couple matches, Gecko, jump on. Well, obviously she deserved it. Oh, yep. Doo-doo. Wow, that must be terrifying everybody. It's taking really long to find an opponent. Hope I don't have to play a bot. Hey, do we find? Yes, we found somebody. Hopefully they don't give up. Man, I had one where they had double my life and they conceded. Oh. Clearly they saw that I played pre-4th edition And that was terrifying. By the way, does anybody know if I can change the cover card on my deck? I don't even have rats in my deck, so why it's a... I guess it's a typhoid rat now, not a plague rat. Huh. I like the land, but there's no creatures. What do you think? Should I risk it? This guy's really good. Yeah, I'll risk it. What the hell? Who cares if I lose? I was thinking about adding maybe like some green to this for mana growth, because I think the carotenids can add any color of mana. And so if I went with like white green and black green dual lands, I think I could get the mana acceleration without harming my ratios too much. Idyllic Tutor. Sounds like the old demonic tutor card, except a white version of it. Well, you know what time it is, right? Gecko should know. Boop the nose. Even if this guy doesn't really have a nose. It's still a nose boop. There must be a nose under there somewhere. Maybe it's a really ugly nose and that's why he's all like shadowed. He's embarrassed of his nose. Well, that's not nice. So does it get this draw immediately? Boop the nose. What? Don't quit already. You're not seriously going to quit, are you? Okay. He's still fighting on. Good. I was worried there for a second. Telling me good game. Also, that's clearly a gross card. I should have banished it. Maybe. Even if he was, he's still not doing that well. And boop the nose. Boop. I'll kill you with my 2/2 creatures. Little nibbles. The beginning of each player's play can't they discard a card? They lose 2 life. You draw a card. What? Well, that's a terrible card. Hopefully I get a Banishing Light so I can get rid of it. Man. What a butthead. He killed my thingy. Because he's seen them. So apparently when he's able to, yeah. He did a thing earlier where he was able to see my hand and then like, no, he's definitely trash talking. He was able to see my hand and then choose a card to discard. Got rid of my Banishing Light. It's kind of cool. It's like a Sleeping Beauty thing, right? Oh, I may lose this one. That sucks. Okay, see you in a bit, Vela. Maybe if I get Shadow the Sky or something like that, it'll be alright. Yeah. Pacifism will work for now. Do I already have a Compound Fraction? The gray? Nope. How many of that does he have? I don't like that card. Two, 4, 6. Okay. Thwart the Grave. Give me my Harmonious Archon. Oh. Do I have? But I don't. I don't understand. Weird. Oh. Okay, so I could submit 0, just offering the option of bringing in a wizard, a warrior, or a cleric. Okay. This won't end well. Sorry if there's any munching sounds. Somebody was really nice and brought me a snack. Well, you might be winning, but I'll kill your knight. So there. Now I'll boop your nose. Where is he getting all the Pegasi? I missed some text? Whenever enchantment comes in, okay. I get it. Nice job, dude. Good game. Got my butt kicked there. Apparently I can't go down from gold 3. That's kind of neat. Kind of thought maybe like if I kept losing I'd get my butt kicked all the way down to bronze. You still there, Gecko? Need my coach. The small victories. I got screw you. I did not get carried. I earned it. Thank you very much. Man, brutal. Brutal. Can you believe the savagery going on here? All right. Let's see if we can... What do you think? Think he's going to be a giant deck, creature deck, direct damage? Anybody got any bets on what the composition's going to be? There's that giant. That'll be fun. Haven't gotten to use that blood beckoning yet. Ouch. It's kind of neat. That fabled passage effectively got him +4/+4. Stop wiggling it. Let me see what it does. That wasn't nice, dude. Why you do that to me? So, cross my fingers for a board clear and 2 mana. I don't know if I got this. What's crippling me still is that although I finally unlocked a couple of decent cards, I don't have the card mix that these other players have. Well, that, and I'm still learning a lot of the cards and interactions because I'm seeing new things like basically every game. Yeah, I got the moth. I unlocked a deck that had the moth in it. And you know what's happened every time I played that moth? It insta died. Nobody wants to let me keep it. They're like, no, you can't have that. Yeah. Buttheads. That's gruesome. What, that I should get rid of their creatures? Yes, I should definitely get rid of these creatures. I don't really have that option at the moment. Got kind of mana screwed on this. Huh. Yep. I don't think this is going to go well. Alright, so after this, let's take a look at the mana composition. Brutal. Alright, deck. New deck. Alright, so... Oops, did not mean to do that. Shoot. It's a vampire. There we go. Hey, it worked. Thanks, Gecko. Look, I got a new lead card for my deck. Awesome. All right. So 28 land out of 88 cards. We've got double the white cards to the black ones. Yeah, I know, and I said thank you, Gecko. I appreciate it. Alright, so what do you think? 2 more planes? Brings us up to 90 cards. Still have a lot of spells to creatures. Let's see what we can do about reducing that a little bit. Alright, land. Vampire land. That'd be cool if there were vampire lands. Alright, couple more planes. We had 15 enchantments, so Maybe look at those first. I want to try and keep the Griffineries because they pop out creatures and they're pretty cheap. Pacifisms I definitely need to keep since they're creature denial. Well, I could probably get rid of one. This was really good for dealing with the planeswalkers, but there's only one in the deck. It's really unlikely that I'll get a hold of one, and I don't have any extra. So we'll ditch that. I like the Luminous Broodmoth, but it's not working out. Much as I want to keep it. Enchantments. Oh, the pacifisms are enchantments. Okay. About instants. Tactical advantage is nice, but it's just not as useful as the others that give like Death Touch, Lifelink, Indestructible. I want another one of those. That's like a one cheaper murder, basically. Pick up one more Shadow of the Sky because I need that to show up a little more often. We're down to 85 cards. $32 spells to 23 creatures. That's a little better. Alright, let's see how this works. I think the time slot might have been better for the other stream because we're definitely not getting the viewer surge like we did before. Of course, I'm getting my butt kicked a lot more this time, and nobody's chatting with me. Come on, guys, pop into the Discord, hang out, chat with me. I'm all lonely in here. Ew. Well, glad you picked it up, but ew. Velo is picking up dog shit, apparently. Yeah, whatever, we'll keep it. Well, there's my board clear if I need it. We think black-green since they're playing an elf, or mono-black? Purple? It's not an option in Magic. Oops, wrong card. There we go. And boop the ears. Food. Leftovers. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I should trade this for a time slot more in line with the Friday, Saturday streams. It's a batty bat. What did he choose? Death touch. There. No attacks. I don't know. I am open to suggestions and requests. I don't really want to stream twice in one day. I'm already streaming more times during the week than I ever expected. Wheel. Oh, that's got a counter on it. Actually, that'll be funny. I'll destroy his death touch counter. It's not nice, but I want to do it this way because it's more funny. Oh. I know I could have just killed it outright, but that was so much of a funnier way to do it. And then I can save my murders for, like, bigger critters. Oh, you got blue. Blue-black? Yep, bigger things like that. That's not an option. There's no purple in Magic. I mean, I guess technically you do red-blue, but... Multi-boop. Are you conceding, Dev? Just let me boop you one more time. Just one more boop. Target opponent looks at the top 3 cards of your library and separates them into face down and face up pile. Top pile will be face down. Weird. I don't really understand what just happened. So I make 2 piles, and then he picks which pile he wants, but only knows what one pile is. Weirdness. Come on, let me boop you. Let me boop you. Don't concede. Let me boop. I want to boop. Give me boop. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Dude, if you have something, play it. Fight on. If you don't, let me boop you. Multi-boop. He almost saved it there, though. What was that card? Wow. 25 whole XP. That's kind of neat. Might be worth adding. Help with the mana screw. What do you think, Gecko? Would that be a useful addition? Could use it kind of like the instance give indestructible. Now, can I switch? Do I have to switch, like choose at the time of casting which I use, or can I dynamically switch it? Anybody know? Like, if I cast it as the land, can I then use it as an instant later when I want? Kind of a chambered round kind of a thing. Just at cast. Well, that's not quite as cool. I mean, it's useful, but not quite as cool. It'd be neat if it could be like on the board and then I could cast as an instant. Do I risk being creature poor? Might get 2 draws before I could cast most of my creatures anyway. And I got 2 kills right here. Yeah, let's try it. Hey, there's a creature. I know it'd be nice to get the order out, but denying him the mana I figure is a better thing. Slows growth down a little bit. And yes, Sparky, there are purple fireballs, but that's not the same as like your deck being a purple color. Order out. Griffin Eerie. What do you do? That's kind of gross. Oh, that wasn't nice, man. Why'd you do that? Not nice at all. Oh, I meant like purple decks. Like there's black, white, green, blue, and red magic. These mutation decks are gross. What? Can I? Okay. For a second there, I thought it said I couldn't block it. Yeah, I'll block it. Kick it and give me both creatures. That was kind of cool. Hey, that's my Griffin eerie. That wasn't nice. Why are you breaking my stuff? Order. Hallowed Priest. I don't like that guy. That guy didn't like me either. I don't think this is going to end well. That's gross. One hit point. Fine. Victory is yours, sir. But I booped the nose first. Can't stop me from booping the nose. Right? Gotta go out with a boop. Where's the fun if you can't at least boop him a little bit? Can't stop the boop. Maybe that's what I should title the stream. Can't stop the boop. Probably work better if I was winning more though, yeah? Man, I tell you, when I play off stream, having all these like really good games that are like epic reversals and all this shit, winning, get on stream, at least today, dead. As long as you boop, you win, right? I don't feel bad though. Like I said, this is like what, day 4, day 5? It basically had to start over learning this stuff. Because all the cards are different. There's all kinds of different mechanics. I mean, the mutation stuff, the just the number of counters available during combat, landfall abilities, planeswalkers, commanders, I guess, are a thing. The whole having people in your party, the adventure mechanic, all this shit's completely new to me. No idea what's going on with it. You, sir, do not get that card. Nope. Say goodbye. I don't like it. I don't like that one either. Leave it for the moment, but I don't like that one. Yeah, but Gecko's being awful quiet. She should really get in the Discord and hang out. Offer some advice. Be like, no, you're doing it wrong. Don't do that. What were you thinking? You know, that kind of thing. No, there's totally hope for me. Don't tell me there's no hope. As long as there's boops, there's hope. I don't think Gecko's working. Have you tried not dying? Oh, Panda with the savagery again. Brutal. Brutal. Alright. Fine. I'll let you boop me. Now I boop you. Boople back. And to be honest, Panda, I've tried it. I just haven't succeeded at it very much. So if you have any like specific strategies for getting from just trying to succeeding, that'd be awesome. Oh, hell no. No moth for you. I can't have a moth. You can't have a moth. Yeah, Gecko's recovering from a car accident. Which really sucks. I mean, good that she's recovering. Sucky that, you know, she's hurting. Don't like that part. What is the snapping Z formation? Also boop. I swear the avatar's face looks like, what the hell? Did you just boop my nose? Huh. I don't like that card either. Hmm. This dude's probably going to play a Scoot Swarm, isn't he? Somebody beat me badly with a Scoot Swarm. Had like, got me to like negative 300 life or something stupid like that. Hmm. Oh, I don't like all this. Hmm. Yeah. Get rid of that shit. Say bye-bye. Really would have rather waited until he was down to like one card for that exact reason right there. 10-6. Gross. Yep, my deck definitely needs some work. You gonna help me with some deck design later, Gecko? Be my consultant. Why does your life need some work? Thank you, Gecko. I appreciate that. Oh. Stupid Mothra. Well, this isn't going to do much. Oh, shoot. I could have brought both back. Dang it. Still wouldn't have saved me. Rip. This has been a brutal session. Maybe I should have gone to bed instead. Alright. We'll try one more, but then I'm going to bed. Because I should be in bed anyway. Clearly, it's obviously bedtime. Clearly, it's obviously bedtime. No, clearly, just obviously bedtime. I know it's past bedtime. I was in bed. Then I woke up and was like, oh shit, I was supposed to stream. It cracks me up so much that your son is doing that. Bella's got a little one who called out, it's obviously bedtime. Hey, little dude, how are you today? Obviously it is. Go away, kitty. Bad kitty. Don't yell at your mother. If you yell at your mother, I won't let you come listen to the streams. Can't be having that. She's too good a lady. Did he hear me, Vela? Okay. Did he apologize? I could banishing light as banishing light. Seems a little cheesy though. Protection from multicolored. This would be like a 2/2. 3/3. Okay. Well, that's too cute. Remove 3 counters. It's a 0/0 and it's dead. I will refrain from booping. You look kind of shocking. I suppose the chances are that this guy has a Bosri Planewalker in his deck. Take the boop. Okay, I shall boop him. Think he'll block? He didn't block. Boop the nose. Unavoidable boop. Actually, it was totally avoidable. Does deserve it, but he boops back harder. One more punch would have been a bop instead of a boop. He's only got 2 cards. Yeah, let's do it. Oh, it's probably some ability. Yeah. When he dies. Bring back my Vampire Cleric. And I'll put my Hallowed Priest on the board, and they'll both gain a +1/+1. Sweet. Wow. That wasn't as nice. Alright, so I'll be able to make them both indestructible. Yeah. I only like that guy when he's on my side. Oh, you did? Nice. How? Alright. Let's kill you. Let's kill you. Block. Fight as one. Both indestructible and both big enough to kill their opponents. And no attacks. Guess it's just down to who draws the winning card. It's not going to be enough to save me, though. Maybe if he had lifelink. Rip. What is spell table? Not if I've got gloves. Or a robot. Could totally make a robot to play. What? I could totally build robots. Oh, that was not the thing I needed. Rip me. Wasn't actually a good game. I just got stomped. Oh well. That seems like a good place to end it. Ending in defeat. Oh. Ouch, I can go down rank. No. Oh well. We'll try again tomorrow after the stream, alright? That was brutal. Ooh. I got a new deck though. Maybe... Let's check out what we got first. We get any cool new black cards. Boot nippers. More killer cards. Ooh, I've been wanting this one. That's a nice bonus. What is this thing? Ooh. Ooh. That could be fun. Especially if I had one of those cold blades or something down, or an eternal thirst. What are you? It is a scary worm with teeth. Anything new here? Doesn't look like it. Want some more of this? Blight Priest. Alright. Well, thanks for hanging out with me, everybody. Hope you enjoyed story time. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of magic, even though I got my butt kicked bad this time. And send me those answers for the giveaway questions. I decided I am going to post the questions in the Discord. Need to figure out where. Well, I'll figure out a place and then I'll post them. But they said that'll be better than making everybody go back and watch the streams. You're going to be doing that enough for the scavenger hunt anyway. Bye, Gecko. Bye, Sparky. Thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. We can go raid Ishurna real quick. You guys want to see some glass blowing? Let's go raid a Shurna. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll catch you later.